Hey guys, what's up? This is What's the Tech, and this here is the OnePlus 9 Pro. Now the 9 Pro has a lot on its plate. The whole ethos behind OnePlus has always been about, I'm not like other flagships. I can give top tier performance without charging top tier pricing. But this year, the 9 Pro is showing that the OnePlus brand is taking yet another tepid step into being a more traditional mainstream flagship in a world full of $1,000 plus flagship devices. And that's okay. Let's check it out. Alrighty folks, first up, let's check out the design of the OnePlus 9 Pro. And this is one of those that to me is a combination of both being pretty bland but also good looking at the same time. It just has nothing particularly memorable about it design wise, but it does look like it draws a lot of design cues from various Chinese vendors, especially if you get it in a glossy finish, and Samsung's latest S21 line. The aluminum side railing is a touch thinner compared to Samsung's implementation, and the display runs off to a slight curve on the sides. But luckily, this is one of those that are more subtle as opposed to extreme, like a waterfall. All in all, with everything put together, we can appreciate the seamless design and tight finishes. Even if this isn't really quite memorable or standoutish, we can tell it's premium. The color we have here is pine green, as you can see. The Pro versions of the OnePlus 9 come in matte green and a shiny reflective morning mist. I like the matte more. It leaves less fingerprints and to me has a slightly more mature vibe to it. The camera module is on the upper left corner with an assortment of lenses and a big ol' Hasselblad logo right on it. In terms of I/O, we have just one USB-C port right in the bottom. Now about that Hasselblad logo. If you followed any of OnePlus's marketing, it's pretty in your face and it's also on their landing page for the OnePlus 9. They're not particularly shy about the whole partnership. Now OnePlus and Hasselblad agreed on a mobile partnership in order to improve on the whole camera system of the OnePlus 9 series of phone and the future iterations of OnePlus phones. This is probably because previous reviews of OnePlus phones have often showed that the OnePlus excels in so many categories when it comes to hardware, software, and fluidity of the OS, but always has fallen short because of the camera system. Usually OnePlus could shrug off the complaints of a bad or decent-ish camera, but the fact that the OnePlus line has generally been cheaper. However, steadily over the years, OnePlus phones have become more expensive and eventually have splintered off, with the OnePlus 9 Pro being the more premium flagship build, the OnePlus 9 regular, no suffix, and the OnePlus Nord. So with that said and done, OnePlus decided that partnering with Hasselblad was the right step to take. Now it's not like OnePlus here is actually building the cameras. In this iteration, at least for the OnePlus 9 series, they're mostly just doing software stuff, color science tuning to make the colors more natural. There is also a presumably bright future ahead because OnePlus has hinted that there's going to be a more collaborative effort moving on besides just doing color science tuning. Now let's check out the pictures on the OnePlus 9 Pro. The pictures themselves are pretty inoffensive. They definitely are a step up compared to the past that most people are aware of, and this is thanks to the better color science, thanks to the partnership with Hasselblad, and the new Sony IMX789 sensor in the Pro version. The 9 Pro's take on colors are a bit sharp like the Pixel, but somewhere between a Pixel and Samsung in terms of overall saturation. The 9 Pro at times suffers from too much over sharpening, and the higher saturation is something I'm usually against, but it isn't as aggressive as the S21 Ultra, which I did do a review on, and I can really appreciate that. Because although this is more saturated than how it did look in person, it's a playful take on it, I have to say. These images are mostly of the main wide-angle shooter, but where I think OnePlus did a fantastic job in is with their ultra-wide. Generally speaking, the ultra-wides and cameras have been more of an afterthought. Yes, the shots are more fun, but they're visibly less sharp and in detail. The OnePlus 9 Pro, however, has taken without doubt the best ultra-wide shots of any smartphone camera I've ever used so far. And the funny thing is, the white balance tends to be a bit better. Combine the more true-to-life shots that are being taken, plus the fact that these high detail ultra wides were also low in distortion, kind of made me want to take more ultra wide shots of it. And I think it'd make the average person want to take more ultra wide shots too. The built-in telephoto is a 3 1/3 zoom, which is fine. It goes a tad bit farther than the iPhones, but not as far as the S21 Ultra. Now this here isn't a great camera system, but it's a good one. OnePlus really has a thing going on here, and this has really shown that they've taken this commitment towards improving their camera quality quite seriously. If they continue these investments, I wouldn't be surprised in a few years' time they can actually start rivaling those of Samsung and Apple. Moving away from camera stuff, let's talk about daily usage and specs. Now, OnePlus devices have always been about giving the best value per dollar, as well as giving users what's important on the market today. All of that in the pricing of $969, it doesn't seem that bad. Let's go over the specs. Powering under the hood, we have the Snapdragon 888 processor, a 6.7-inch LTPO AMOLED display of 3216 by 1440p, capable of scaling the refresh rate between 128 Hz and scaling down to 1 Hz in order to save battery. 12 gigabytes of RAM with 256 gigabytes of storage on this model. The camera module houses a 48 megapixel main wide-angle camera, a 50 megapixel ultra-wide, a 8 megapixel telephoto, and a 2 megapixel monochrome camera. The selfie shooter is a 16 megapixel camera. There is Bluetooth 5.2 support, Wi-Fi 6, 5G mid-band, and ultra-wideband, depending on your carrier. And on top of all of that, we have a 4,500 mAh battery cell, giving juice to the whole shebang. Now, these are pretty good specs that easily place this phone somewhere between the S21 Plus and Ultra, and handedly besting each of them in different categories and conceding in others where I think it's completely reasonable. Now for starters, the OnePlus 9 Pro and the S21 Ultra both share the latest processor from Qualcomm, the Snapdragon 888, as well as adaptive refresh rates on their screens in order to help conserve battery life. Now the 9 Pro does start with 12 gigabytes of RAM, and so does the S21 Ultra, but you could spec it up to 16 gigabytes. Now, OnePlus could have followed this model, but I think personally that they've just said, we're not going to go on that route, because honestly, 16 gigabytes of RAM on a phone, on an Android phone, might be overkill. And I can see that. Most people probably don't need 16 gigabytes of RAM. It's for those who want to have their phone as future-proof as possible. Now, the 9 Pro's camera system is good overall, but they don't quite stand up well against the S21 Ultra or the S21 Plus. The Samsung phones here still offer better sharpness, detail, and HDR performance. But the one thing the 9 Pro has going for it right now is that it takes wickedly good ultra-wide shots. So use that in your weighing mechanism there. Because at the moment, no fruit company nor Korean giant can match it on that regard. Now with that in mind, daily usage with the 9 Pro really showed just how much you're really getting with this device. Using it every day, you're immediately overwhelmed and yet gently caressed by the fluidity and simplicity of using OxygenOS 11, based off of Android 11. It's light, close to bone stock Android, and remarkably free of bloatware and reminders to use OnePlus's own ecosystem of apps. It's there if you want it, but you can just neatly tuck it away, like I did. OnePlus is known for its quick and timely updates, and I've already received a few updates and security patches, which is pretty nice to see. The whole user interface benefits from the fast 120Hz display, and I didn't notice any stutters or gives at all from the LTPO display, so the software is gauging when to slow down at the right pacings. Animations were smooth, flying around the OS, flinging myself up and down articles, and zooming past various songs. One thing I'm pretty sure that OnePlus is pretty proud of is the haptics on this phone. The haptic engine or motor inside of here is pretty top notch. If I had to compare it, it's a tad bit weaker than those you find on your standard iPhones, but it's something you can appreciate and something that OxygenOS takes a bunch of advantage of. When you're going through a scroll wheel, they really want to make you feel every single tap that's gonna give to your palm. And also, this is something I wish other Android vendors copied. This is really useful. A silence slider here. I don't know why other people don't do it. It's not like Apple owns a patent. It's a switch. Anyone could do a switch. Plus, when you take a picture, it makes this really sweet noise. Here, let me do it for you guys real fast. Here, listen. Oh, I had it on silent. You hear that? That sounds really good. It's pretty addicting. Photos aren't the best, but it sounds like you're taking the best photos. The screen is vivid and sharp, but what I've noticed is it doesn't get as bright as I'd like for outdoor usage, particularly in the sun. It's no Samsung display, but watching media content is pretty satisfying still with P3 color support and HDR10 certification. The speakers are pretty good too. They're stereo with one bottom firing and one top earpiece speaker, and they're pretty well balanced up until you get near max volume. They're pretty enjoyable to listen to, especially if you just want to hear your stuff out loud while doing chores. The fingerprint reader is fast and accurate, but one thing I can't comprehend is why they placed the fingerprint reader so low on the device. I mean, it just needs to move up a little bit more and it'll be in a more natural spot. So now we're moving on to battery life here. And battery life is kind of a nuanced, mixed story, and you take from it what you want. But I'll give it the fair shot first, and then I'll tell you what I think about it. Now, the battery in here is a 4,500 milliamp hour cell. And OnePlus's narrative of that is that even though this battery is smaller than an S21 Ultra, and in general, I think kind of in line with Android phones, so it's not really pushing things by too much, is that yes, this isn't the biggest battery. But if your battery gets too low, you could always top it off with their 65-watt warp charger. With that warp charger that comes free in the box, you can get a full day worth of charge in just 15 minutes, or go from 1% to 100% in 29 minutes. And frankly, I found that more true than not, which is pretty nice to have, especially if you are one of those where you don't like charging your phone overnight, but instead you quick charge it when you're doing your morning routines. Now, overall, what I'd say is my daily battery life in normal usage, I'd have it ending around 20 to 25%, which is cutting it a little closer than I'd like. I would prefer a little more wiggle room. For my personal preferences, I'd actually like a larger battery cell so I can end the day with a bit more juice. But if you're one of those that's okay with giving quick top-offs, this is something that can easily be something that fits into your lifestyle quite well. Now, the kind of people that I can see can really benefit from this kind of strategy that OnePlus is offering are those that use the warp charger at home, right? And those that use their high wattage USB-C laptop charger, if they have one, at work or at school. Because if you are low in juice, you just plug it in, pop in the charger, and in 15 minutes time, you have almost a full day's worth of battery life again. My preferences are larger battery, okay with slower charging, but it's up to you. On the topic of 5G, I generally had 5G off. This might be my fourth review where I talked about I had 5G off most of the time, because while today I can say that 5G is more easily accessible, I don't have access to ultra wideband, so I still, because of my carrier, have mid-band support. What I did notice is that when I'm using 5G, the battery life did get zapped a little bit, but it handled it reasonably well. Okay, so where does this put us? The OnePlus 9 Pro is more flagship than flagship killer. It does come a tad bit less at $969, and because it comes officially a tad bit less, that does mean it overall has better value comparatively. Especially in North America, OnePlus is still, relatively speaking, a niche brand. They're trying to muscle into territory that's predominantly dominated by Apple and Samsung, especially more so with the bowing out of LG and with the Pixel line by Google reinventing itself along the way into being a more affordable option. And I'm pretty sure OnePlus knows this as well. This is their 13th iteration of the OnePlus phone with whole number and T and Pro series or whatever. So what I'm trying to say is they've had practice and they've improved slowly throughout the way. What OnePlus needs to work on now is, even though they're known for giving quick and timely updates to their devices, even for devices that are no longer the new ones actually, is that they need to commit to longer software support. They used to be relatively vanguardish in this position, but Samsung has recently committed to giving software support, or 3-year software support, to its major flagships as well as popular phones. That puts it in line with OnePlus. And in terms of value, OnePlus can't raise the price too much, so they gotta offer in long-term software support. Now, we've talked about it already when comparing a tad bit between this and what Samsung's offering. A lot of the components in this phone is pretty much the same in a Samsung phone. You have the adaptive refresh rate display, you have a 888 SoC, you have a camera that's, well, it's not as great as Samsung ones, but it's a good camera. So where you differentiate is in the world of software. And at the moment, I think the best way where they can stand out is committing to 4, maybe 5 years of support. Beat Google at their own game. Show Samsung that we can put the energy and focus to make sure our customers don't feel like they're being left behind. It means they'll come back time and time again. Moving on from that unsolicited advice that I'm sure OnePlus is rapidly writing down into notes. Why would someone get a OnePlus 9 Pro? And when I thought about it, I suppose it's the same reason why someone would get a OnePlus One many years ago. It's different. If you want a premium flagship device that gives you the best, or arguably one of the best Android experiences on a great software that's super fluid and smooth, but also you want something that not everyone else has in their pocket, get a OnePlus. Because, I mean, the market share proves it. OnePlus isn't that great in North America, but it'd be, perhaps for a nerd, a great conversation starter. And maybe you can convert some of your friends too. Because in the end of the day, you get to say, hey, I have what you have, but I paid slightly less. And I guess that's about it for the OnePlus 9 Pro there, isn't it? Get a lot of what flagships are offering, give what the customers want, but still give it for a slightly lower price. It used to be a significantly lower price, but today it's still a slightly lower price. And you know what? Even if it's a marginal victory, even if it's an eking of a win, still a win in my book. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.